Welcome, friends. Welcome to February. Welcome to Sanctuary Online. Welcome to Black History Month. It is going to be, well, we're hoping it's going to be a wonderful month. I don't know about where you are, but we have had a record-breaking rainfall in the last 36 hours. Our pond is so full and the fishes are very happy. And we are going to drop 40 or 50 or 60 degrees tomorrow and stay Michigan cold for about a week. So prayers. Prayers that we don't lose our power and that Ken and Tom have enough firewood in case we do. And that's how it goes. So it's going to be wonderful this week. Anyway, that's how we're going to start February, believe it or not. So I'm going to go ahead and open up, share our screen, and start ourselves off with some slides here. And so I want to welcome everybody. Welcome those of you that have been here, and also welcome those of you that haven't been here in a while. Welcome back. And also those of you who are watching the recording. For those of you with us live tonight, we'd love it if you can to enable your video. We want to see your faces. One of the things about Sanctuary, it's always about community. And so it's kind of like being in the living room, having a chat tonight all together. So also, if you ensure that you're in gallery view rather than speaker view, then you can see everybody. And it is like we're sitting in a living room having a wonderful conversation. We'd also love it if you would open your chat box. You can type in your first and last name, your email address, where you're calling in from, all those great things we love to capture. And those of you that watched our annual meeting, you know why we capture all that data and actually do research regarding it and trying to keep abreast of what you want out there. Another great feature, one of our ways we communicate, if you'd like to, and you put your cell phone number in the chat, Barb will scrape that up, and every Tuesday, you'll get the cutest little text message that says, hey, Dr. Aaron, it's Tuesday, and here's what we're doing on Sanctuary Online. And it's a wonderful way to be reminded during COVID that it's Tuesday for those of us who everything blends together. Also, what we do also is after each of these conversations, we post them both on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. And that way, if you want to watch the recording or if you think a person might find some real value in the conversation, you can point them to that. If we have your email, you can put that in the chat if we do or if we don't. And you can always email us at talktous@sanctuaryinthewoods.com. Or if you put your email in the chat box, what we'll do is we'll again scrape your email and be happy to add you to our database. We will not spam you. We send about one email a week. And really that says, here's what happened last week and here's the link. Here's what's happening next week and maybe a little schedule. And because we realized in doing our preparation for our annual meeting that all we tend to talk about on our weekly emails is Sanctuary Online, we're going to add a new feature around Sanctuary and kind of tell you what's going on with the rest of Sanctuary, the construction, the building, any progress around that. So that's exciting for us to add that feature to your weekly email. Make sure you open those babies up and take a read. Let's see. Oh, this is me thanking folks who were at the annual meeting. And again, that the recording is on our Facebook page pinned, as well as in our YouTube channel. And it was a wonderful meeting where we really shared all that had happened in 2021. And we were able to point forward and share what we plan to do in 2022. And for those of you who've never been here or haven't been here in too long, we also had a little like a photo montage between every one of our presentations and let you kind of take a look at the area, the property, the animals, you know, just the joy and the love that's down here at Sanctuary in the Woods. So speaking of what's coming up, February, oh my goodness. So here's the deal. I wish I could hide this from you, but I can't. So tonight we're finishing our 3-part series on what has or what hath, Kristen Vandermeer, COVID wrought. We've talked about our personal lives and we really heard blessings as well as challenges. That was a wonderful conversation. The next week, we actually talked about our professional lives And for many of us who were directly impacted, what kind of opportunities have we created or sought out? We also spoke about how some of us have lost some of our caregivers, our hairdresser, a person who does our chiropractic or massage, things like that, because those businesses weren't allowed to sustain themselves. And it's a great conversation. And then tonight, we're talking about our spiritual lives. So we're going to start kind of interesting. Ken's got a little bit of a beginning presentation, and then we will get him. Hold on, he's got to go find Ken. There we go. A really nice opening, and then a great conversation teed up for you all. But I have to address next week, my friends. We have something. It's a brand new feature that we can't be more excited about, called Sanctuary Kitchen. And if you've ever loved a cooking show, if you've ever watched too many cooking shows, if you've ever gotten sucked in, if you've ever eaten at Sanctuary, if you haven't eaten at Sanctuary, it is going to be the coolest feature. So we're incredibly excited. And that's going to actually start next week. So we are coveting your prayers, because we've never tried to video and stage food and all this kind of stuff. So it's exciting here. The challenge and the blessing we have is that Tom has been in this kind of business all of his professional career. So he wants stage lights and this and that, and Ken wants 14 cameras, and we're like, oh my God, make the soup, Ken. So it's going to be incredibly exciting. We hope.
So you're going to cook live?
Yeah, we're going to cook live, Kelly, and we're going to give you the recipes. Many of you may or may not know, we are in the beginning stages of a sanctuary cookbook, and we are, again, beyond excited for that project to be on our plate this year. And obviously many of the dishes that you've tasted if you've been here to Sanctuary, or if you haven't yet but you've heard or seen our wonderful Facebook posts, we'll also be reaching out, because we know there are many fabulous cooks in our community. And of course, we'll be taking a look at you bringing some of your gifts on to both our Sanctuary Kitchen feature, as well as in our upcoming Sanctuary cookbook. Now, lots of admin tonight. 2 weeks from now is going to be sort of, kind of a focus group, but online with you, because your voice matters to us. And as many of you know, as COVID is changing our world, it's also changing, we want to make sure that we stay relevant and that we're serving our online community in the best way possible. So we're going to tee up a few questions. Not only will we talk to you all, because you're regulars and you've seen a lot of what we've done, we're also going to be reaching out to people as well who maybe were on during the beginnings of COVID and who've fallen by the wayside. There's a whole bunch of good reasons, but we're excited about asking the questions and listening to you and shaping our 2022 programming. So February is a big month. I am glad we're finishing with a good book.
It's a fabulous book.
Hold on. So,
it's a fabulous book. Sorry, I'm here.
Cheryl and I are crammed into our tiny back office here to make sure we have all the internet focused right here for you. So Codebreaker, if you haven't had a chance to read that yet, jump in. Man, that book is already kicking our butts, and it's going to be an amazing conversation, a real relevant conversation.
Ken's advertising.
Ken's advertising already. Yeah. Here, Ken, I'll show the picture. Codebreaker by Walter Isaacson. Ken came to book club last week, and now he's already starting to read the next book. And Ken, you're probably already at dinner tonight making a suggestion for next month's book. So we're excited for all the conversations that we've had.
Yes.
Amazing books we've read. And then this last month was The Personal Librarian. Again, a phenomenal conversation. So I think, my friends, that is all I have for you. Ken, how about if I take the slides down and You know what? I'm going to leave this slides up for just a minute because you're going to speak to what the next slide I want to talk to in just a moment, and I'll take them down. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Here we go. All yours, Ken.
Okay. Okay. Is my internet as bad as Joby's? Can you hear me okay? I'm having real problems hearing Joe. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you, Ken. You're good.
We can hear both of you really
Yeah.
good.
Oh, we're
Y'all just
frozen.
can't hear each other.
Okay. Oh, okay. Terrific. Okay. So, you know, this is the third and closing session of our series that we're calling What Hath COVID Wrought? We've talked about how COVID has affected our lives personally and professionally. And then tonight we're talking about how COVID has affected our lives spiritually. We all know that all of the surveys that talk about religious life have been telling us now that people are becoming less and less religious, and that people are attending fewer and fewer religious services of all kinds. Now, that's been going on literally for decades. For example, all of the most recent surveys about in North America now have to include a whole new category called the Religious Nuns, N-O-N-E-S. In her book, A Nun's Story, Karina Niccolo, who Tom and I have known since she was just a little girl, describes herself and other nuns as people who may or may not believe in God, people who may or may not visit religious worship services, but who do not identify with any specific faith and do not belong to any spiritual community. And the number of nuns in these surveys has increased, at least in the United States, from 16% of the population in 2007 to 25% of the population today. And that's for the total population. If you look at people 30 years of age and under, that percentage jumps to 35%. And that
Ken's down.
Who said that? Ken's down. Was that you, Kristen? Kristen. Well, I'm gonna luckily, Aaron knows this. I had to do a backup last night, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue with Ken's conversation here. When he was talking about the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, Barb, do that, honey. Barb's down also. We've lost the lost. Sanctuary Online needs your prayers and tech support. Yes, Kevin. So the number of nuns.
Joe, I'm on.
Just.
I am on, Joe. I'm on with my iPhone.
Thanks, Barbara. You co-host? You are now.
Doubt it.
You are now.
Okay.
Kevin, I'm making you co-host too.
So
when Ken comes back in,
let him in.
Yep. So anyway, let's just move. The number of nuns, the percentage of nuns in that younger category is around 35%. And really only 36% of the adult population today are saying that they attend religious services with any regularity. All this was before COVID hit. Once COVID hit, you know, normally, historically, in times of crisis, people become much more religious. And we'll chat about this in a minute. The crisis sometimes faces us to, or forces us to face our own mortality, which this pandemic has certainly done. And normally that becomes more true. But in the case with COVID, it's not been true. And we want to begin by first acknowledging that religion and spirituality are not necessarily the same thing. And as soon as Ken is open, and there you go, Ken. Ken, I just finished your notes. Welcome back, my friend.
Am I back?
You're good. Why don't you start up, Ken, where the distinction between religion and spirituality, okay?
Okay. Yeah, for our discussion tonight, we'd like to begin, with making that distinction between religion and spirituality, which are not always the same thing. And this is the distinction that I like to make, that religion is about trusting in someone else's, like some religious authority or some religious institution's experience of the sacred. That means they tell you what to believe, while spirituality is based on your own personal experience with the sacred. And of course, most of us have been exposed to both of those practically from the first time, from the moment we're born. There are some questions that we would like for y'all to join with us in exploring tonight. And we'd like for you to approach the questions we're going to be talking about, both from your own personal experience and from the experience of your friends and family, and just from what you think you are observing about this topic kind of generally in our society right now. But before we begin our discussion, let me share briefly with you what some other people are saying about this particular topic. Donald Miller and Diane Winston, who are both a part of the Center for Religion and Civic Culture at the University of California, Southern California, along with others, have noted that first, the decline in religious life before COVID plus COVID have resulted in the deepest disruption in religious life in recent memory, and that the deeper the disruption, the greater the changes will be as we come out of this. And so they are saying that all of us right now, we need to be using the very highest level of imagination possible to think about what we want both personal and public religion to look like when all of this is over, because it's obviously going to be different. And the ways in which it is different, we literally are going to decide those things for ourselves. Second, they observed that this pandemic has either forced people or it has at least given people the opportunity to explore religion and spirituality in ways that they have never done before, and that many of them have found that the belief systems that they have always said they believed in offered neither the comfort nor the answers that they are looking for right now. While at the same time, all of this abundance of religious programming online has given them the chance to check out both other expressions, maybe of their own faith, and an opportunity even to look at other religions in a way that they never would have if COVID had not come along. And then finally, Diane Winston says that while mainline religion was declining before COVID, and that certainly has continued during COVID, she says that something else totally unanticipated has happened during this time. And she cites four things. She calls these a boom in unorthodox expressions of spirituality. The four things she cites as evidence of that are, number one, a dramatic increase in apps for guided meditation and in assistance for learning how to pray. The second one is a dramatic increase in online classes in subjects like mindfulness. The third one is a dramatic increase in Google searches for individual spiritual disciplines and practices. And the fourth one is an increase in people creating their own in-home altars and shrines. So with all of that kind of as a background in our minds and our own personal experiences during this time, back to you, Joby, to sort of help us lead off in this discussion.
Thanks, Ken. And thanks for teeing up a whole bunch of what COVID hath wrought in our churches, in our religious systems, in our practices, right? And so the way we did this that's been so wonderful the last couple of nights is just really having folks jump in. And our first question is kind of, how do you think this pandemic has affected your religious or spiritual life? And we'll open it up. You know, the most fun example I have is my mom, who every Sunday at 10 o'clock, that chick goes to church twice now. She never in her life went to church on Sunday twice, I promise you. But she actually has three choices. She loves Toronto for the music. She loves her church because it's her church, her little Methodist church. And then she goes to my brother's church for the preaching. So she, honest to God, goes to 3 different churches normally on a Sunday morning from her kitchen table. So that's how it's affected Mom. And I'm sure she'll probably only go back to inside a church for funerals, maybe weddings. We'll see. Well, how about the rest of you? How has this made a difference in your lives? And just unmute and jump in. I will have a chaotic conversation. Peter.
I was doing the same thing as your mom. For the first year of COVID, I was listening to 3 different services every Sunday. And it was so wonderful because I could do that. There were 3 very different presentations and ideas. One was Trinity Church in Austin. One was MCC Church in Austin. And the other was my little church here in Georgetown. All 3 Christian churches, but very different slants. I loved it. I still do occasionally catch them.
Yeah, thanks, Janice. And it is so you've actually added a little bit more spirituality, or from a church perspective, more church to your life than beforehand. Yeah. Yeah,
and I got on this side with you guys.
And then there's us
during that time too.
Peter, I think you had your hand up first, and then Darcel and Kevin. Let's just bounce across.
Yeah, I find that because for health reasons, I still don't go out very much. I for the last couple of years have reconnected online with my Orthodox roots. I've explored many MCC congregations. I find myself on Sundays starting with oftentimes Australian, kind of following the time zone around the globe, which is kind of crazy, but it's a great opportunity to listen to how my colleagues preach and how the theology exists, and how and how different and yet the same churches our churches are. I have a feeling this is a practice that will continue in my life, even when and if I do attach to another congregation, because I think it's wonderfully opening. Wonderfully opening of my spiritual experience.
Yeah, well, thank you, Peter. And that's, going back to your roots. But again, maybe things you wouldn't have done had you actually had to drive somewhere and choose this or this, when you can do so many things at different times. 100%. Darcel, then Kevin, then Bonnie and Carol, then Dr. Aaron. Look at this. I knew it'd be a good conversation today.
Great.
Darcel, California girl, how has this affected you?
I love the fact that I don't have to get out of bed early. I can have my coffee and do church online. But the thing I miss is the contact with people. I miss reading at church. I miss reading scripture. I miss being of service at church.
Yeah.
And that, for me, it's like there's a void there, because I could hug 50 people and be good for the week. but I enjoy it, but I miss it. But the other plus to this is if I want to catch MCC Austin, I can do that.
Yep.
And my church Founders starts at 11, and I get to hear Reverend Keith preach. And, you know, if I want to do it all day, I can, but I just miss seeing the people. I mean, it's one thing to type it. Yeah. I mean, I still feel my contact with God, but it's not the same.
Yeah. Thanks, Darcel. Yeah. So what I'm hearing you
Thank
say
you.
there is that, and you were involved, you did communion, you read at church. So you were actually active in the service, right? And knowing
Yes.
you, Darcel, you would get at least 50 hugs in a week. So absolutely, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of folks missing their Darcel hugs as well. So it's the blessing of not having to get up, and it's the missing, honest to God, that personal challenge, which interestingly, if you went into church, Darcel, you may not be hugging folks right now either, right? A whole bunch of bumping.
Oh, I know.
Maybe. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Good old elbow bumps.
Elbow bumps. Not quite the same in my book. No. Kevin, how about you in Canada? You were real involved there at MCC Toronto for a while, and yet now you're living about an hour and a half away from the church.
Exactly. So the movement away from the church has made a huge impact. A big part of my spiritual celebration was my ministry in creating a situation where people could actually hear the word.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I was the sound guy at MCC Toronto, and I did that since 2003. Helped develop the webcasting program. The irony is I don't like the webcast because I don't get the same experience, because my ministry is serving people directly, and I can't do that just by listening. Yeah. So I've really been looking, and I think I've landed on something. I can't go to it yet because they haven't started doing services yet. But here in St. Catharines, or just the next city over, is a church called the Salem Chapel BME Church. It is a British Methodist church, and it is Harriet Tubman's church when she lived in St. Catharines.
Wow.
Yeah, goosebumps, right?
I know, yeah.
So I want to start. Yeah, I want to start going to that church. I feel a calling to it. I have no idea what the service is like. They don't have online services at all. That's okay. I don't like them anyways. And so I'm looking forward to when they reopen and to discover this church, discover this and live into this history, and maybe find a way that I can have the same kind of impact that I had in Toronto here in St. Catharines.
There you go. There you go. Good luck with that, Kevin. I'd love to hear about that. Bonnie and Carol from the Sunshine State. How has this affected y'all's spirituality? Unmute, ladies.
You need to unmute.
There we go.
There we are.
Nice.
I think it's changed our lives a lot. I have to start by saying that I've been a deacon with MCC since 1990, and Carol's been very active in the MCC churches too since, the 90s. And when this all happened with COVID, and we couldn't go to church because we had to close it down, I had been scheduled to preach. It was just one of those crazy things, because the pastor would give us the 5th Sunday of each month, which was about 3 times a year, and the deacons would take that and give him a break. So long story short, Carol found an app on our computer, and we'd never done anything like this before, ever. So we got a folding table, and we opened the folding table up in the hall and set up a recording, and I would serve communion and do the prayers and Carol would do the recording of the scriptures, and pastor would put his sermon on, and then they'd link all this stuff together and put it on YouTube. So these 2 old girls have been on TV. So it's really, it was a lot, and then after, we did this for about a year?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. We've been busy. So yeah, because I did the scheduling of the readers, and Carol would do the recordings of them, and I would develop the readings from the information from Pastor. And then he retired, and we have 3 deacons who can preach. So we scheduled alternative weeks, you know, because we did finally go back to church. They're Easter. Yeah, they're socially distanced. They're wearing masks, keeping it clean and sanitized. And believe it or not, we are not hugging for the most part. It's really been pretty good about that, which is hard for us because we're huggers.
No fist bumps.
No, we're not fist bump people. But anyways, we have enough space to give people a comfort. We're not having the hospitality or anything like that yet, but at least we're having services. And then he retired, and we haven't had time to get an interim pastor. So long story short, I was scheduled twice in January to preach, and one of the other deacons came down with COVID the week of his message, sir. And for not doing it on a regular basis, it was, yeah. And I've had to double up with Carol as a reader because a lot of the other people have not come back to church yet. And even for us, I mean, you can tell I'm hoarse. I have COPD and asthma. So I was trying to preach with a mask on.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah. So it's been an odd experience. I think both of us really missed the people contact also. It was really hard. One of the benefits of doing this recording here at home was that people would call us and we would record them. So we would get to speak to the people at least a little bit. But that was our whole contact for a year and a half, and it was hard. Yeah. And now Carol's the head of the pastoral search team. And I'm the liaison to the board for the deacons and preaching and scheduling and So
our spiritual journey has taken a little zing.
Yeah. We're learning more of the administrative and participation part, you know, rather than just receiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
but
it
it's
sounds
been
like
good.
you've stepped into leadership roles that once again, in a pre-COVID world with a stable pastor. So that's been the same way with these conversations we've had every week, my friends. There have been some opportunities created or voids that we have stepped into that, again, that may not have been anything we'd have thought of doing, right, in a pre-COVID. And so a lot of us are finding out that we're more resilient than we thought, we're more creative than we thought, and we can do these things that someone needs to do right now, and we're stepping into that. So good on y'all, and that's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting.
One of the things we discovered was that the benefits, because I'm not a techie person at all. I want to go to church. I don't want to produce a YouTube thing. But the benefit of it was we could watch the church that we were both very active in. I was the founding deacon there, and she was the
volunteer coordinator.
Yeah. And so
communications.
Yeah. And so we were there for a number of years, but it's too far for us to travel from where we moved to here on Sanibel. Not at our age anyway. And so we would watch church. We would have church. We'd set up our little communion table here on the coffee table and have church and see all the people that we missed seeing from up there, and then set up the table here and record me to do this one. It was funny.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. You know, thanks, ladies. We've got a lineup here. Dr. Aaron to Kristen to Lisa to Ken. And I'm curious, there's a lot of talk about church. Curious to hear how this has impacted spirituality as well. So go ahead and, if it feels comfy, blend that in a little bit. Dr. Aaron, how has COVID affected your spirituality?
A lot. Thank you, Bonnie. That was amazing what you've been up to. My husband and I, over these last 2 years, broke up with religion. It's interesting because organizations with a system. I feel like what happened in the world and all the division and all of the angst and all of the agitation actually pulled out of me an activist that was never there, and that my activism feels like spirituality to me.
Yeah.
And
there you go. Yeah.
There was a young man that was singing in the choir in our church, and they found out he was gay, and they said he couldn't sing anymore. And that was a very clear demarcation for us that we would no longer be going to that church. We don't have MCC here. Believe me, I've never gone to church in the MCC style. I think I would love it. But so we had some good conversations with our kids about it. But if you go and look at our children's rooms, like there's a cross in every room, and they're very spiritual beings, but we're not religious. And so I just really, I think the way that the world was so in two buckets and not seeing everyone's viewpoint, and it was so agitating me that I could no longer find a space for my spirituality inside of religion.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Erin, I know you're not the only one. You know, it's interesting that even a lot of ministers and folks who, like Bonnie and Carol, who have been in leadership, and there's a lot of folks, Kevin and Brendan and Darcel, and my goodness, Annetta, all here on, I'm trying to see who else is on here, Carolyn, my goodness, that we're thinking about different ways to be church leadership, right? Thinking about different ways to find and seek our spirituality, right? And for some people, that is going back into church. For other folks, and it was interesting, they kind of say, I may never see the inside of a church again for my regular feeding, you know, my regular kind of spiritual practice. And they're seeking that in other ways. So welcome to your activist spirituality. Thanks, Dr. Erin. Kristen, tee it up, girl. What you got?
That could not possibly be a better transition, Dr. Erin, because I have, for the last couple decades of my life, not been a churchy religious person at all. The last time I tried to seek out a church was actually when I moved to the Chicago area, so over 20 years ago. Wow. And I found the church people to be, for that particular church anyway, you know, I was associating the church people with very far right wing, very conservative, very cliquey, and not open to a lot of things. And so I was like, church equals this. I don't do religion anymore. I don't do religion. And for me, the quietness of the pandemic, being home, definitely led me to the guided meditation apps, to more self-reflection. Joby and a lot of you guys know I do a lot of hiking. I find the quiet in the woods. I love that. That's my church. Scuba diving for the first couple years. I fought against getting a camera. I didn't want the camera because I liked the quiet under the water. But in the past, you know, in my 20s, I tried looking for a lot of churches because I wanted the sense of community, right? That's what I wanted. I wanted the community, and I wasn't finding it. So, you know, in a bizarre way, through the pandemic, through tripping on this group, was my introduction to, you can have church and have an open mind. You can have church and believe in science. You can have church and be in favor of change and growth and things that I believe in, and still have the spirituality. And they don't have to be extremes, that you can actually have them together, right? And all of you little beautiful faces on my screen right now are examples of that. And so I actually, probably like in the last a month or two ago, and I just looked again, was like, maybe it's been over 20 years since I've looked for a church. I wonder if there's one around here. And I was driving around town, or driving through town from someplace, actually probably coming home from a hike, a month or two ago. And I noticed there's a church in town that's got a big old giant pride flag hanging out front. And I was like, well, that's probably a pretty forward thinking church. So it's not MCC, but I just looked them up again too. They call themselves, so Denville is the town I live in, Denville Community Church, the Church of the Open Door. They are still worshiping online. I guess I could listen to their recordings, but I've not felt moved to do that. I've more been like checking in on their website every now and then to see when they meet in person, because I feel like I have to like see the people, not just whomever is preaching. But yeah, that all of the quiet time, all of the self-reflection, all of the guided meditation through the apps has led me to think about looking into churching again, and what that might look like in the future, beyond the mountaintop and underwater. So we'll see. This story will continue.
Well, I love hearing that, Kristen. No, obviously we're going to be here for, and there's so many ways. When we look at our Sanctuary Online calendar, we try to look at the week, the calendar. We look at the church calendar. We look at the seasonal. We look at Black History Month. We try to be in the social, because that is what MCC is about. MCC is as much a social movement as a spiritual movement, and those are different pillars of our belief system. And so, so thank you for that. And I look forward to you looking. Kristen, you're in New Jersey. I got people on the side here looking up things. Barb looking up where MCCs are. But again, the fun thing is you can go online to
look. I mean, they're obviously in New York, right? They're in New York City.
Yeah, they're in New York City. Yeah. And Lisa, I'm going to put you and Ken on hold
obviously
for a second. Oh, Cynthia, I think I'm getting notes in my, you guys are all chatting on the side here. And I was like, it's like, Cynthia, I think instead of, if you want to get in line, the way to put your little hand up is to go down to your bottom of your screen, and there's a little reactions guy. There's a little smiley face right next to the share screen. If you click him, the bottom, besides all the other things you can do, is raise hand. And so you can do that, or you can put a party hat up. But Cynthia, you've had your hand up for a while. So Lisa and Ken, let me go to Cynthia first and then come back up to these two of you. Is that okay? It's okay. I think it's okay because no one's talking to me, but because you're
well,
first.
You know.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I definitely miss my church dramatically. I definitely missed the in-church meeting terribly and participating. So, and I especially felt it on World AIDS Day because they all honor me because I went through so much. And so they stick me up in front on a stool every year. And I look at it's a small church, but we have our young people. And I say things like, okay, throw any name at me and I'll tell you the story of a gay man who died of AIDS. And they're just shocked. They give me Steve and Tom and Bob and Robert. And I just keep going and going. And they're like, it was that many can do things like that. And so I haven't been traveling, and travel was such a big part of my life. And my partner died 4 years ago. So I live in this 2,400 square foot home by myself. So I only have visitors once a week, usually. My friend Connie comes over. So I feel very isolated, but I want to recommend a couple things that have helped a lot. First of all, like everybody, I've been to so many MCCs around the world, really. And, but why do we save it for Sunday? I often now on Thursday, Tuesday, I'll go on YouTube. Reverend Rochelle Brown was my pastor and led us to our own building, which was wonderful. She has very inspiring sermons down at Baton Rouge. So I just put her name in YouTube. She's not the pastor there. She just goes there regularly. So, I think I use the whole week, but I've gotten an idea just from what you said tonight, because near me here, I have a table full of pictures. And I've got my friend George Murphy, who died a year ago, and my partner Darlene, and my other friends. But you know something? I'm going to create that spiritual space you talked about.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to write to George's family. George was a collector of crosses. And I'm going to ask his family for one of them. Believe me, he had probably 400 or 500. And I'm sure they know how close we were. But that will be in my spiritual center too. But as I said, I think it's so great to get away from Sunday only. And this business, I mean, God's everywhere. We can find God. But I love pastors like Ken Martin who would say, yes, but when 2 or 3 are gathered,
yes,
there Christ is in a stronger, there's a stronger feel.
Yeah.
So I do mean, I do want to feel that, and I miss it. So, but as I said, I think if we can, move us to the whole week, any night, just you're lonesome, but put it on.
Well, definitely Tuesday nights, right, Cynthia? You wouldn't miss us.
That's about it, I guess. And
well, and Cynthia,
always.
You actually came up.
And I will say that of all the people that I've invited to this, yeah, if people get invited to this, they always get fascinated with the term creating a life that matters. I've had to explain that to many of my friends. So anything you can do with that, I think that'll attract more people. My friends get so fascinated with that message.
Oh, thank you. We are looking as one of our other projects to put that up and online and redesign it again. So we can cast a much wider net of folks who'll be able to experience that curriculum as well. So thank you. And I was going to say, Cynthia, you came up at dinner the other night. Just that many folks may not know this here, that you are such a big presence in the historic arena of MCC. I think you were Ken, this is a segue. You were the head of Ken's board of directors when he was a pastor in Chicago. Do I have that right?
I was, and
yes.
I was thinking of
in
that
Chicago.
Yeah, I was thinking of that today. You know why? Because it was in the days we were all about women's liberation, and we were all, everyone was sure that everybody was going to take it on and do all this stuff. And of course, when I first went there were 40 people in the church, and there were only 3 women. Of course, all of us had leadership roles. But anyway, what I remember about being the vice moderator on the board in Ken's board was that I had been on the board 2 years. I was ready. I wanted to do it. And by golly, a man came out of the clear blue. His name, I think, was David, but he was not going to have a woman. And he went around to the other board members and politically tried to fight my taking on that role. Do you remember that, Ken?
Yes, I do.
Yes. And again,
yes.
Ken was named it right away. This is sexism. That's what this is. So fortunately, the board did not, fall for David's push. But yeah, I've been through a lot, and but it still warms my heart to see any MCC online. I mean, it's just so fun because we do have the commonality of the communion, and
I don't think much would stop you.
It's fun too.
I love the whole comment. I loved your whole comment about you don't have to wait till Sunday. You can go to church or you can be spiritual any day. It's not just about, Sabbath. Your Sabbath can be any day of the week, right? Yeah. Or more than one day of the week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good deal. Lisa, you popped out before Ken. Are you done? Are you having internet issues, hair issues? Or are you done?
I'm good. I think my hair is okay. No, it's been really cool to hear everything from Ken's first comment about the nuns, which I was very interested in my response and how that resonated with me for me as well as for my sons, who were brought up Roman Catholic, and between one son in the Marine Corps, going to war, coming back, and really not being able to connect again. And he's a very spiritual young man. And then my older son, who, pretty much rejects anything, of convention. And, we know the seeds are planted, those types of things. And Bill and I continually pray. And I was thinking about, for myself, being absent really from the world for about 4 or 5 years, and then coming home in April last, and really starting to work on my journey back, and not ever being out of touch with God, but just that faith community and so on. And of course, by then we're well into COVID. And one positive thing that came out of that, and I think my perception or my basis or my experience has been wherever we lived in the world, you went to whatever church was available.
Yeah.
So we weren't tied to a specific religion per se. It was, you found the church community. All the way to, you know, in Saudi Arabia, it was a house, had your time, which is similar to the military, which, you know, same chapel, but all the different denominations using the building. So really that part didn't matter all the way up until, you know, when we arrived in Virginia a few years ago. Bill very quickly found a church community that really resonates with him. And, you know, they've asked him to be a deacon, and he's, you know, right now the junior warden, so he's always repairing that little old building. And you know, it's not something that has resonated with me. It's very conservative, and I miss the social action piece. And that was one of the things when Bill and I were doing our planning this year, because it bugs him as well. We're like, why aren't we feeding people? Why aren't we, you know, out in the community? You know, okay, the church is only maybe, you know, 50 strong, and they're all very elderly. Don't tell Bill I said that he was elderly. But just that he, you know, that's something we're just taking on ourselves this year, to get out in the community and provide, just be the hands and feet, because we're not particularly, either of us, finding it in that. I'm compelled now to work a little bit more on this nuns thing. And, you know, while spiritually I feel intact, you know, I'm always finding ways, plugging in here, having good conversation with humans about, you know, where they are, what they're doing. And then the coolest thing on the online Vista is my cousin is Kahu David over in the Church of the Crossroads in Hawaii. And so I've been able to go to his service online. Yeah. So there's just been a lot of, you know, doing cedar with you guys and that kind of thing. So, you know, yeah, that's crazy. What a great question.
Well, thanks, Lisa. It's interesting. We know we could have talked like for 2 or 3 or 4 hours about this, but we want to keep it rolling. But it's interesting in this time, you and Bill, your husband, are actually, since COVID, you know, very separate in your beliefs, and you still are doing the husband-wife thing and working it out. So I love that. And yet a core belief of the church can be feeding the hungry and you know, helping those folks. And so if your church isn't going to do that, just like Cynthia just said, well, then you go ahead and do that. You know, you guys can, you don't need the church or the church people, there's Kristen, you know, for your own spirituality or for your own community, right? To do Jesus's work, right? That's not even hard in today's world. The bar is so darn low. But Ken, I want to flip it up to you. And then I have something I just want to close with. I want to honor our time tonight. And I'm sure there's only half of you even begun to speak tonight. So I hope you've enjoyed listening and participating to the conversation. If you're holding your hand up, I can't see nearly any of you. Our internet is so bad. You're a bunch of cute looking black squares with your names in white. So if I'm missing anybody, please just speak up here. Ken, why don't you jump in next? If you have internet. Nothing?
Did you say me?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I couldn't. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I was a Southern Baptist pastor for 12 years and then a pastor in the United Church of Christ for 3 years before I came out and came into MCC. And my experience with those churches, as well as Methodist, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, if you were in one of those churches, you were there because everybody there believes pretty much exactly the same thing. The unique and amazing and wonderful thing about MCC is that we come from all of those different backgrounds and we don't have to believe the same thing. When I was a Southern Baptist, if you didn't believe exactly what they told you, you weren't welcome. You know, in MCC, we don't have to have the same beliefs as long as we have the same values. It is the values that hold us together. It is our different beliefs that keep us interesting and exciting to each other as we share all of these different experiences of spirituality, which aren't necessarily welcome, you know, in all of those other churches. There was a commission of the U.S. Council of Churches a number of years ago called COCU, the Council on Church Union, and they said that MCC is the only successful ecumenical experiment in the 2,000-year history of Christianity. MCC is the only successful ecumenical experiment in the 2,000-year history of Christianity, because we're the only time in 2,000 years that people from all these different backgrounds have come together and stayed together just because we want to, because it's more important for us to be together than that we all believe the same thing. And so, you know, one of the things that apparently that COVID has caused is for people to experience things outside of their narrow little experience of, you know, that people's spirituality is beginning to blossom, is beginning to bloom and open up, you know, as a result of COVID. That's one of the really good things that can come out of this.
I remember, Ken, when you were the pastor and everything was very MCC, we had everything set up, and you said, tonight we're going to have guests from an ecumenical council, you said, and I don't know how they're going to take it. They might walk out. We don't know what they're going to do. And afterwards, I remember Ken went off to a room and met with them and answered a lot of their questions. And I ran up to Ken and I went, well, what did they say about communion? And what did they say? And he said, they didn't say anything. They just kept saying, you mean everyone in this room isn't totally agreeing on the Trinity? You mean everyone in this room? And no, and then we would point out there was this former Methodist pastor, and we had several Catholic priests, and Ken pointed that out. And I remember that so well, because I thought, oh, we are special in one way. That's what they wanted to hear about. How do you put all this together? And you do. We do.
We do. And that's one of the things where Cheryl's poking in here quickly to remind me, you know, and Kevin, you'll know this from MCC Toronto, we had folks who were fully Jewish in their entire belief structure, who authentically and with integrity served communion at MCC Toronto, and people came and took communion from them. They served it. Clearly different understandings of what that experience, that bread and wine, that meal per se was about. And yet, because of how we opened ourselves as a community, we had folks from many different faith backgrounds in MCC Toronto, which made it difficult to run service, made it challenging, but it made it amazing, you know, to have to do the work of being in community, spiritual community, staying together, you know, and it was just an amazing experience. And I don't know if Ken, if you're still online there, because and I know folks, we're just a couple minutes over. I've got a very quick closing, but Ken, are you still there? I can't see you. You have to tell people. Yeah. And if you have never heard this story, my friend.
Yes, I am, Joe. And what I am, and
I just want them to hear that story, Ken. And I know it'll take a few minutes, but my friends, if you've never heard the story and you want to understand spirituality, Ken, I could hear this story from you 5,000 times about when the council came to your church. So I think that's what Cynthia was alluding to.
Oh yeah, yes. Okay. I'll try to tell this. I'll try to tell this very quickly. This was when I was a pastor in North Hollywood. In 1985, the World Council of Churches sent a visitation team to the United States. And they came to Los Angeles, and the Methodist bishop was responsible for their schedule. And he brought them to MCC in the Valley in North Hollywood, where I was the pastor, one Saturday morning. And he so that they can ask you questions. Saturday morning came and we were sitting around drinking coffee and eating donuts, and I heard sirens, and they got louder and louder down Coalinga Boulevard, and here were like 12 police officers leading a cavalcade of black stretch limousines as far as they pulled into our parking lot. This was the World Council, no idea what we were getting. And so then a big van, well, first of all, security team swept our building to be sure. International press came in, set up all around the sanctuary. And then the chauffeurs got open the doors to these limousines, all flying flags from different nations. Out stepped all of these bishops and dignitaries, literally all over Asia and Africa and Europe, everywhere, many of them wearing robes and garb, and they all came in, many of them with translators, and sat. We thought that the reason they were there, want to talk about, was the fact that most sexual minority people, but they just kept asking a single question, was about what Cynthia was just talking about. Do this. If you don't all believe that, how can you go to that table and take care? Some of you believe in transubstantiation. Some of you believe in and don't believe in transubstantiation. Some of you believe in symbolism. Some of you believe in real presence, and some of you don't. So how can you take communion together when you don't even believe the same thing? And one of the lay women in our church, Judy Longman, without even batting an eye, she said, "Oh, that's easy for us. We just believe that if you'll come up here together, God will make this whatever you need for it to be." And these brilliant ecclesiastical minds from all open, it had never occurred to them that if they could just get over themselves and if they could just come to that altar together, that God can make it whatever you need for it to be. And that's been our experience in MCC now for over 50 years.
Oh, Ken, I could hear that story
Amen.
1,000 times. And I think I was there. I've heard the story so many times, and it gives me tingle bumps every time I hear it. Oh my gosh. My friends, I know it's just a minute here over our time, but I do want to remind you of a couple things quickly. One is next week, bring a friend to Sanctuary Kitchen. You know we're not afraid of anything, so if it's crazy and bad the first time, it'll get better. But we are so excited. So find someone who loves to cook and invite them next Tuesday night to Sanctuary Kitchen, our new feature. And then mark your calendar. This really means a lot to us for the 15th of February. We so want to hear your voices to make sure that what we're doing, what we're planning, what we're delivering is what is needed at this point of time in our world. You know, we started Sanctuary Online for some really, really clear reasons in the beginning of the spring and summer of 2020 when we were all shut in. And then last summer we went every other week, and that seemed to really work. And you know, we just want to make sure we're really nailing it. So your voices, many of you who've either been here occasionally, that voice matters. You've been here a lot, that voice matters. You come once in a while, that voice matters. We really will do a good bit of work to discover how to make sure our programming stays relevant, stays important. You know, really, we started out trying to answer the questions people are asking right now, and doing that in a place that was safe, supportive, challenging, and certainly not all in agreement. So yeah. And so I want to offer you this, Kristen. I have to first say to Kristen Vandermeer, for those of you who were here our first two conversations, Kristen was our facilitator, and just loved that, Kristen. So massive applause and thank you to you for doing such a great job, bringing a new voice into the Sanctuary online sphere. And Kristen the very first night when we talked about how COVID has affected each of us personally, this was your last slide. And it just struck Cheryl and I so deeply that we've been thinking about it and talking about it, and at Sanctuary dinner time. So you talked about this, and on the left hand of the slide, it's like the inevitable. It's what has happened. And there's a lot of things in our lives over the last 2 years that many of us wish hadn't happened, and they have, right? I had a mentor used to say, you know what, Joe, it is what it is. And there are things that are out of our sphere of control. And then, Kristen, the person on the right, says the silver lining is the part that I personally take my own agency. I take my own control. I have choice, you know, and that's not in the entirety of the world, but it can be in a whole good chunk of your world, a focused chunk of what you can do. I love it. Lisa, you and Bill aren't happy with your church's social outreach, so you're going to go do it yourself. Cynthia, no need to have church on Sunday when you can have it Monday through Sunday if you want. So many ways that we can be creative and we can affect how we live into a world that COVID has affected. And yet, how am I managing my personal understanding and impact and response, right? How am I affecting my professional response? And tonight especially, and so core to who each of us are, how am I affecting? What choice and agency and responsibility am I taking over my own personal spirituality and caring for those in my pod, in my circle? So I hope you all have just enjoyed the heck out of these conversations. Your sharing has certainly blessed all of us. And getting out of here without crying, thank you. Thank you, thank you for being part of this incredibly important conversation. Love y'all.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording, and I know that's
thank you.
Bye.
Go